Clemson loses another defensive end on the recruiting trail, this time to California. Is Chris Rumph getting it done? We'll talk about it right now on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked On Clemson, and part-time host and producer over on 105.5 and 97.5 FM, The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're new to the show, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode. You know how we do it here on Locked On. Exclusive Clemson content Monday through Friday, every single week. And don't forget to follow me over on X at The Morgan T Show, where we can talk about all things Clemson really whenever you want. Today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head over to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. If you're a gamer like me, you really want to get a part of that. Clemson has lost a 2026 four-star edge recruit, Cam Brooks, this time to California, as Tiger fans are a little bit frustrated with it on the message boards, talking about defensive end coach Chris Rumph and saying that they're questioning whether or not he is actually getting it done on the recruiting trail. And I can kind of understand where they're coming from, because they have yet to actually land a commitment for the 2025 or 2026 recruiting class. Now, they did have one in Ari Watford in 2025, but since then, they haven't had any success. Brooks, 6'3", 225-pound pass rusher from Thomas County, Central Georgia. He is ranked 196 overall, number 22 edge by 24/7 Sports, and committed to California just yesterday, despite having over 30 offers from elite programs like Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, Michigan. And Clemson, he decided to pick California, leaving a lot of fans wondering what in the world is going on. Maybe there is something else there. It's obviously not, proximity to home, and it's obviously not, having a prestigious team compared to the other teams that are out there like Clemson and Ohio State, Georgia and Texas. It really kind of was a little bit of a head scratcher of why he chose California instead of, his hometown or even Clemson. So fans are kind of upset about that. It seemed like a lot of questions about Chris Rumph. The defensive end coach was brought in a couple of years ago, and they've needed to kind of reset because Lemansky Hall, a lot of people liked Lemansky Hall, but it seemed like he kind of checked out the last couple of years in recruiting as well. So that's why I believe we had a little bit of a gap, or a big gap, if you will, at the defensive end position or the edge position. And that's why Clemson and Dabo Swinney needed to go to the transfer portal to get Will Help, because of a little bit of a gap there in the recruiting success. Now, fans are starting to wonder, hey, what's going to happen with Chris Rumph? Because it's a little bit slow to get somebody from 2026. They don't have any commits as far as a defensive end or an edge player. However, they are still very highly ranked, in the recruiting process. They're in the top 5, I think top 2, depending where you're looking at still. So they're in a good standing overall nationally. But fans are looking for the next big defensive end and questioning what's going to happen. When you look at the bigger issue, I think that right now they have done really well. Clemson's kind of shot out the gate doing really well at the offensive position, or offensive side of the ball, rather. Meanwhile, defensive edge, not doing so well. 2025 class wasn't as strong, 30th, 25th, give or take. Ari Watford was one of the better defensive ends that were out there, 6'6" guy. He enrolled early, but I think that he's a guy that's going to have to, develop for sure. But I still think that he is somebody who could contribute early because of how talented he is. Now, Clemson's pass rush struggled in last season, and to get to the backfield, struggled to stop the run, to cut off the edge there. Outside of TJ Parker, nobody else really could get a footing there. AJ Hoffler ended up hitting the portal, which was a guy that I think all of us really liked and thought that, he would be the next man up. So filling in a spot was huge. I have not personally lost faith in Chris Rumph. I think, he's still out there. He got a ton of offers still out there available. His highest guy out there in Anthony Jones is still available. But a lot of fans really are saying they're looking to get back to defensive end university or D-line university, as if the whole line, in the days of Miles Murphy, the days of KJ Henry, Xavier Thomas, those big-time five-star guys, seems to be lacking right now. Jordan Carter went to Texas A&M, Jamarian Matthews, Alabama, Kamarian Johnson, Alabama, Samote Katonga. I know I'm going to butcher that name, but he's Southern Cal, and now Cam Burks to California. So they've offered 10 guys, and you got half of those guys that have already moved on or picked another place other than Clemson. So it is a little bit frustrating, I think, from the fan standpoint. 5 of the guys already off the board, and Chris Rumph right now still empty-handed and doesn't have an elite defensive end talent to kind of add to the mix. But I do think that they still are in some good standing with a few uncommitted guys like Cruel and Dre Quinn. So they still have a couple of options out there that might be possibilities for them. No commits for sure. So that is a little bit frustrating, but in 2024 season, not being as strong in the rush defense and setting the edge also kind of adds to that. But one person said on social media, Matt Luke came in and really started to turn the offensive line around immediately, started to get better recruits immediately. And it seems like that the defensive end position is still kind of trying to find its place. And maybe it's Chris Rumph trying to find his place in recruiting. Maybe it's the NIL era. Maybe they're just not looking to commit to that level of pay for the type of packages that these guys are looking for. California, maybe is. I don't know. I would probably say Southern California and Texas A&M and Alabama definitely would. Losing one to California, it is kind of a little bit of a head scratcher for sure. Drake Quinn also on the list as warm for 24/7 Sports. I don't know how really you can kind of take that for a grain of salt, I guess you could say, just because I never really know how up to date that is compared on what the player has said recently. But Chris Rumph's still not out of the fight. So he's got a ton of targets out there. I mentioned Anthony Jones, 37th player nationally. Jake Cruel, 60th player nationally. Dre Quinn is one of the better defensive ends. Now, he's not nationally ranked, but he's in the top, 35 of defensive ends in the country. And they have him as a warm rating, but I don't really know how strong that is at all. But Kamari Brooks, also a Georgia guy, ranked 173 overall. So he's still got a couple of high-ranked guys that he can still go after and try to pursue. So my verdict is still out. I think that I'm not willing to say that I'm losing faith in Chris Rumph. I'm not willing to say that the defensive end recruiting is struggling to the point of panic. I still think that you have time. I mean, we're here in April, so we're about to be in May, and maybe he can have some magic happen in the summer, and maybe we'll just have to wait till December for these guys. I don't know, but recruiting is definitely interesting and gotten more difficult as the years go on. But I do think that Clemson wants to and needs to land a defensive end player. You look at the positions that they've gone after. Defensive line, 15 overall, and 10 of those are from the edge position. So, they're looking, and that's one of the heavier position groups that they're going after. Offensive line, 17, defensive backs, 15, and defensive line, 15, with a heavy dose of defensive edge position. So, Clemson needs offensive line, they need defensive line, and they need secondary as well. So we'll see how it all shakes out. They've got to land somebody for sure. You'd hope sooner rather than later. Not hitting the panic button yet. If we get to mid-season and they still haven't landed anybody, and you only have a few left on the board, that's when I'd start to kind of get a little bit frustrated. But I can understand why fans are already kind of saying, hey, watch out for this. This is kind of an early, maybe not a red flag, maybe not a red light, but it's maybe like a yellow light, if you will, kind of like a caution. Concerns are ahead. All right, we'll continue to talk about Clemson football, specifically talking about the pros and Hunter Renfrow back in the NFL with a team that's close to home. Hey, let me tell you about FanDuel. NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, you can join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet. If you get $250 in bonus bets if that bet wins. So go check them out. I love FanDuel. I've talked about them a ton. I love how easy it is to use. I love going in the app and seeing all the different kinds of ways you can win. During a game, there are 3-pointers, there's steals, there's assists, there's all kinds of different kind of player props that you can go through and bet on your favorite player. It's really fun. After tip-off, you can combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a big chance to win, and you get paid out very, very quickly. So FanDuel is really fun, a ton of stuff, not just NBA, though, plenty of other sports out there that you can get in on the action as well. So go check it out. Don't miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. So the Carolina Panthers are signing Hunter Renfrow to a 1-year deal, and it is a great move, I think, because, it's always good to have a Clemson player close to home. I've always wanted a Clemson player on the Carolina Panthers. But the Panthers have never drafted a Clemson player in 30 years now. I can't believe we're literally talking about 30 years. No Clemson player ever drafted it. Honestly, I know that there's some ties to Wofford there. I know that some of their board of directors have some ties to South Carolina. Maybe there's some bitterness there because Clemson is a better university and a better football program than South Carolina can ever even dream of being. But so maybe there's that. But I do think it's shocking to me. I thought that they had a chance to get Deshaun Watson back in the day. They had a chance maybe to get Trevor Lawrence. They've had plenty of chances to get a lot of guys over the years and just have never drafted them. So it is really cool, though, to have Hunter Renfrow back. I thought he was done. Myrtle Beach native, 29 years old. 29 is old when it comes to the NFL. Returns after not playing last season. 269 catches, 2,884 yards total, 17 touchdowns. Was a Pro Bowler in 2021 with 103 catches and over 1,000 yards receiving. But the injuries started to kind of pile up for Hunter Renfrow. I was a little bit worried about him just because of the amount of concussions that he'd had, not only when he was in college, but then when he got into the pros. He's an undersized guy. He is a guy who is not necessarily somebody you would think is built for the NFL. But the wide receiver room with the Panthers have completely been retooled. You've got McMillan from Arizona. He was their first rounder. And then you got Jimmy Horn, a 6th rounder from this season's class, and from California and Arizona. Colorado and Arizona. Then you got Xavier Legette from South Carolina from last year. Adam Thielen, guy they got from Minnesota, big veteran there, and Jalen Cooker, also another depth guy there. And then Hunter Renfrow could come in and compete as well. I still think he could be one of those sure-handed guys, and maybe if they continue to use Bryce Young, he could be one of those guys that could help out the young quarterback have a reliable third down target. He was very reliable for the Raiders. He was very reliable for Clemson. But it is one of those things that I am excited for, but also worried about just because of the amount of concussions that he's had. I don't want him to hurt himself beyond the level of repair to where he has some sort of debilitating injury or kind of disease that gets to him, because, that's starting to happen, or that's happening more and more now in the NFL. And kind of starting to be linked back to all those concussions and hard hits. But while Clemson is now represented with the Panthers, still kind of a dry spell there with the draft. I don't really know. I really don't understand why 191 players that Clemson has sent into the NFL draft, and they haven't picked anybody. If you look back at the examples from 2019, I believe, Brian Burns. Now, Brian Burns really wasn't a bad pick. Don't get me wrong. I mean, one of the best defensive interior guys in the country at the time, but they didn't pick Clelin Ferrell, didn't pick Christian Wilkins, didn't pick Dexter Lawrence, had plenty of opportunities. They picked J.C. Horn over Trevor Lawrence or Travis Etienne. But they did have, different needs in 2021. So even now, they seem to skip out on some guys that they could have picked up, like Barrett Carter and Jake Briningstool, but maybe they just didn't have the need there. It is definitely about fit, and I don't want any team just to pick guys because they're Clemson. Although that is what I would do in my own NFL draft, fantasy draft, or what I do on Madden. I've done that. That's one of the things that I always do on Madden is I go in and I pick Clemson players, a whole team of Clemson players. Now I remember as a kid though, if you went in and tried to pick a team of all Clemson players, you really wouldn't have any success at all because there weren't a ton of them. So you really couldn't do anything about it. Now, when you look at today's Madden, the kids nowadays, I mean, they can have a whole team, at least the starting lineup of NFL players from Madden. So it's pretty cool to see what Clemson has done over the years with the amount of players that they've been able to draft in during the Dabo Swinney era. But I think Clemson players, when they are in the draft, they're highly sought after because of their character and their development. And they often do go pretty early. But I don't want any team to pick somebody just because they're a Clemson. I want them to be a good fit for them. The Panthers are a team that is still trying to figure out their identity. I don't know if they'll ever really find it. It's kind of like the Bad News Bears over there. They just really, when they get success, then they seem to sell off the entire team. I'm not sure if they're trying to be like the Athletics or not, but they have a little bit of a success and then they dump everybody. And now they're just trying to rebuild. So to me, though, it's good to see Hunter Renfrow back into the NFL. I would have loved to have seen him with a Clemson quarterback, although Deshaun's not going to be playing probably anytime soon. But Trevor Lawrence could have been that guy. It would have been fun to see Trevor and Hunter Renfrow again. But again, the Jacksonville Jaguars is another team that I really don't know what they're doing. I'm not a huge NFL fan, but I do follow Clemson players that are on NFL teams. So it is kind of concerning what's going on over there. Another big thing, I don't have this written down, but I did see it over on X, that Isaiah Simmons is moving on from the New York Giants and moving over to, I believe, the Green Bay Packers now. So I thought that was pretty interesting too. I was worried about Isaiah Simmons because, he was a guy who he fit really well with Clemson, but in an NFL standpoint, a lot of the GMs had mentioned they just didn't know where to put him. But he's had a pretty successful NFL career so far, and he's still going strong. So curious to see what everybody thinks about the 2025 season in the NFL and what Clemson players are going to do the best. Is there any player that's going to shine the most in 2025? I'd like to see DeAndre Hopkins have one more really strong season and try to get to the Super Bowl and actually win a Super Bowl. That would be really cool. I'd love to see another Clemson player, one of our star players, actually get it done and win a Super Bowl in the NFL. All right, we're going to finish up the show with the final segment of tonight to talk about Banana Ball. I actually went to see the Savannah Bananas take over Death Valley, and I'll give you my thoughts on it. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app typically go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60% off. I like Gametime's last-minute deals because, again, they save you a ton of money at the very end, and it's not just about sports either. You can wait and see how the prices do. And at last minute sports, concerts, comedy, theater, music, it's great. Love it, love it, love it. All in pricing too, so you know exactly what you're going to have to pay at the checkout. No surprise fees. What you see is what you have to pay. So you don't have to do any complex math or algebra or get your calculator out. You know exactly what you're going to have to pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. So, I was kind of a banana ball doubter going into this Saturday event. Not that I'm a baseball purist by any means, but I did not like, and I'm not going to back off of this. I did not like the process of how they allowed you to purchase tickets. You had to enter into a lottery. You had to put in your email and enter into a lottery. And to me, the lottery was a scam. It really wasn't truly a lottery. I think that they just allowed everybody in that they could, and you made it think like you were special, like you were picked over someone else. Well, it wasn't truly a lottery to have the ability to buy any ticket you wanted. No, because they forced you into a buying process where you had to wait for your time slot. Well, the problem is they didn't save any seats for different time slots. They didn't save a certain amount of seats for each time slot, which I think they should have. What they ended up doing is saying, okay, all tickets are available from the very first time slot on. Now, I had no other opportunity to get a better time slot than with the lottery. So the lottery, you would think, was for your ability to buy the ticket. But no, it was the lottery for the ability to buy a ticket, but then you were given some arbitrary number or time period to buy a ticket. My time period was much later on in the week, or at least in the process. And so I got upper deck tickets. Now, my ticket actually ended up being on the 50-yard line on the home side in the upper deck, TDE. So it was actually a really good seat. I think it would be a great seat for a football game, not a very good seat for baseball. I didn't feel like it was a ton interactive up at the upper deck. Now, they did have a couple of people. They had one party animal player come up and greet everyone. They had one man nana, which is a dad bod, big, husky guy came up. And then they had one of their, cheerleaders, like 80s dressed out cheerleaders come up. So they did have people come up, but there was no banana baseball players that came up to see us or anything like that. Very difficult to get any kind of like foul balls. Obviously, impossible to get a foul ball, impossible to get, anything. So the distance there, not set up for a baseball game. The one thing my wife and I walked away with saying, we would have liked to have been in a baseball stadium. Maybe if they could have gone to, Doug Kingsmore Stadium and done it for 3 nights. I think they could have sold out 3 nights in a row. I think they could have, it would have been a better atmosphere because the field would have been better for baseball and you would have felt like you would have been more involved in it. Same thing when I got the one thing that I was looking for was the 5th inning veterans, appreciation. They told all the veterans to stand up. I stood up and I thought that they would, come shake my hand, but, I was in the nosebleeds. They really didn't shake anybody's hands. They actually just stood around the ring of the field and kind of waved, which I thought was okay. Hey, I'll take it. I don't really want to be, I'm not really looking to be celebrated anyways, but I just want to go to the game. But I thought it was nice to do, and I was looking forward to that. So I was kind of like disappointed in that. I just felt like, it would have been nice to have a player come shake my hand, but I can understand it would be kind of hard to get all the way up there. But anyways, so those were some of the things, I think, and I'm starting with the bad, going to end with the good. Okay. So I did have a lot to like about it, and I'll tell you all the things I liked about it. But, they hit home runs, and because of the way the scoring system is, the home runs were really kind of like, it was just very shocking to me because home runs almost didn't mean anything. because of the way the scoring was. They had the little home run music, but the announcer didn't say anything about a home run. It really felt like the home run was kind of less important. And plus, in a football stadium, the left field was like 150 feet. So, hitting a home run over there was not that difficult for them. But the Savannah Bananas ended up winning the game. I like that they could do trick plays. Man, I love that they could do backflips and catch the ball. I like that they had little events in between innings where they had like a baby race and they had kids involved. And, I like that they had the golden banana and then they had the singing and they had Dabo Sweeney and the team running down the hill. By the way, I didn't realize this, but there was a lot of people upset about Dabo Sweeney and the Bananas running down the hill, because there has never been another team run down the hill other than Clemson. And I really didn't think about it. I thought it was fun. Like, I thought it was cool. I thought the fact that they got to go around the stadium in the bus and everything, and then they got to run down now they didn't get to rub the rock. And I actually kind of admired that. That would have probably pushed it over for me. Now, I'm not typically a get off my lawn guy. Well, yes, I am. But I think if you would have let the guys get at the top of the hill and rub the rock and then run down the hill, that would have been pretty frustrating for me. Although I have done that. So one year they honored veterans of all wars who were alive and attended the game. So I went and was for the Iraq War in 2006. And so me and my friends and my wife went down the hill, rubbed the rock, went down the hill at halftime. So, it's obvious that they let other people rub the rock and run down the hill. To me, I can understand why you would maybe be frustrated because it wasn't it was an athletic team and not like a veteran or a war veteran or anything like that. But to me, I didn't really get too frustrated with it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was exciting, especially when Dabo came out and ran down the hill with them. I thought that was even better. They had CJ Spiller out there. Now, I was very doubtful that they actually sold 81,000 tickets. Now, I knew that they sold 81,000 tickets, but I was kind of doubtful that they would fill 81,000 seats, because I had this impression that everybody bought the maximum amount of tickets, which they did. Everybody I talked to, except for me, I didn't buy 6 tickets because I didn't need 6 tickets. But it seemed as if everyone around me that I talked to bought 6 tickets, which is also part of the thing that I don't like about the process. But you get into this whole mode of you gotta, they're going to run out, so you buy everything, and it just doesn't give a fair opportunity, I think. But either way, so everybody bought 6 tickets, and I thought, well, there are going to be a lot of empty tickets because not everybody needs 6. Well, that was completely wrong. The stadium was absolutely packed. It was like a rivalry football game, the first football game of the season, or like a South Carolina football game. There were definitely empty seats, but there weren't a ton of them. I didn't have anybody sitting right next to me, but when you looked out across the stadium, it was absolutely packed. So they can definitely go away thinking 81,000. Now, the reason why they do that is, or the reason how they do that is, they only really sold them for 60 to 40, but 60 and $40. $200 tickets were in the West End Zone, in that one area, the West Zone Club or whatever it is. So the rest of the stadium, the entire stadium, was either $60 or $40. So you price, and I think a lot of people say, well, look at the Atlanta Braves or look at Clemson. They can't sell out like that every single game. And it is different because Clemson's not going out and doing a gimmicky type of false scarcity with their ticket buying process. And they're also selling out more, and they're playing more regularly. Same thing with the Atlanta Braves. They're playing 180 something games, right? Now, they're not selling out and packing out the stadium. So people are like, well, look at the Bananas. They're selling out Truist Park or whatever. They're selling out Raymond James. They're selling out Clemson. The Braves would never do that. But the Braves are not also engaging in kind of a false scarcity type of, marketing scheme where they're not playing maybe but once a year and they're also making it very difficult to get into the ticket buying process, and they're also making the tickets very, very cheap. If the Braves or the Yankees made every ticket 60 or 40 bucks, even the ones right behind home plate, then, and they made it to where, you know, it was kind of like a free-for-all to get tickets, or you got nothing, then I think they would also sell out a majority of their games as well. I really do. So, but the Bananas was really fun. I give them props for the 81,000. I give them props for having fun music, having fun dances and little events throughout the season. And they also had great merchandise. The t-shirts, loved almost every one of the t-shirts. I would have bought them all, and they were reasonably priced, about 35 bucks. Loved all their hats. I bought 2 of them. 35 bucks. Great. The jersey was 85, but I really wanted it, but I didn't want to spend 85 bucks for it. But the reasonably priced merchandise was really nice too. You know, so overall, it was not a bad experience. It was actually a great experience. I'd probably say it was an 8 out of 10. Would I go back in the same year? No. Like, it's one of those things, to me, I wouldn't do it again. I kind of feel pretty skeptical about them doing a league and like having a regular competition, because to me, it is gimmicky. You know, it is a circus, but once a year, a traveling circus to Clemson makes a lot of sense to me. You know, I would almost, like I said, if it were me, and now that they've sold out the football stadium and they've shown that they can do it, to me, I would switch and do something like have multiple nights at a baseball stadium instead. So do Doug Kingsmore and do like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you could still, they would still be able to sell it out. No doubt, for sure. No doubt. All right. Well, hey, that's my thoughts on Banana Ball. Let me know what your thoughts are, your gripes, complaints, emotional outbursts, anything, whatever it may be, or just your love of Banana Ball as well. Again, overall, I had a great time. My daughter had a great time. So that's what it's all about. It's having fun for sure. Oh, by the way, she won, we didn't have a lot of people come up very often to the top deck, but that party animal guy came up with a rose, and my daughter got a rose from the party animal. So of all of the people up there, she got a rose. It was pretty fun there too. So again, really for the kids, definitely for kid, 10 out of 10. For a parent, 8 out of 10, probably won't do it again. But definitely something that I think you should do at least once. And I am going to go back. I'd like to go back and see them at their home stadium or see them at a baseball stadium just to see what the difference is. And maybe next time I'll go on StubHub or somewhere and try to get, like 20 different emails and see if I can get a better time slot so that I can maybe get a lower deck ticket. All right, that's the end of the show. I appreciate everyone's love and support over here on Locked On Clemson. It really means a lot. We're almost at the end. Tomorrow will be the end of my April month. So we've got February, March, and April, 3 months here of Morgan Thomas on Locked On Clemson. So hopefully you're enjoying it. I'm getting busier, so the shows are a little bit later right now. I'm working on my commercial pilot license, so still working on that. With a dream of being within the airlines. So one day at a time. But thank you so much. And thank you for making Locked On Clemson your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft with Damon Parson and Keith Sanchez. Your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level. Get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, that's the end of the show. We'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see you at the top of the hill.